My question today for you, Lulu, is should I try and leak that my company is secretly being bought for $26 billion, even though it isn't? Will that help me pump up my valuation? Will I make more money? Should I be leaking nice things about me all day long? Because this seems like a you know an easy hack. Every startup wants more press, and am I more likely to get press if I leak things? Is this a thing? I've never leaked anything. How do leaks work, and what happened with Wiz?
You should be leaking stuff about yourself all day long. I mean, you say so much publicly that you could probably just slip the leaks in there in real time as if you heard it from somewhere else.
Yeah,
There's a lot that you can get away with. Okay, so we both saw this story this week of a leak that Wiz was no longer going to be acquired by Google, and there was another leak previously that said it was going to be, and there was a CEO letter to employees that was sort of like, we don't need Google anyway. And
yeah.
then all of these headlines were that Wiz walks away from it. I don't know any of what happened behind the scenes, but this is a clear intentional leak. So
Hmm.
the way a leak works is someone contacts a reporter and says, please don't attribute this to me. Technically, you would say this is on background. If you say
Uh,
it's off the record, it means they can't print it. But on record means they print it with your name. So
okay.
on background is like, print this information, but don't say where you got it. And if you're really sophisticated about it, you want to negotiate how the source is described. So usually it's someone close to the situation or someone
Yeah.
familiar with
Familiar with the
the
matter.
yeah. But if you're leaking a phone call and there's like three people on the phone call, then you
Yeah.
don't want to be described as someone who was on the phone call. So you just got to
Exactly.
get yourself described in the right way. You go to the reporter, you ask them if you can tell them something on background, and they have to affirmatively agree. This is
Hmm.
like affirmative consent for media. They have to say, yes, you are now on background.
Is this like a
And then
handshake deal protocol at YC for fundraising? Like if they give me the thumbs up in the text chat, it's good.
it is.
Okay.
Yeah, it is. It's like that, but pretty high stakes. Because if you neglect to do this particular crane dance, they can print anything about your words,
Yeah.
face, surround, outfit, anything, and it's all on the record by default.
Yeah.
So you make sure that they agree, and then you tell them the information that you want to tell them. You are probably pitching your angle, and then they might want to go and verify this with somebody else. You could have a second source lined up, or if you have an email, let's say from the CEO to the company, then you don't need a second source. You just show them the email.
Yeah.
So I've been on calls where people are too paranoid to be sending stuff back and forth. So they'll have their phone up to the screen or do a screen share. But a lot of times the reporter wants to see the email. So this was clearly somebody from inside Wiz.
What's so odd is that you would think that, like, does inspect element in Photoshop not exist? Like, do people ever just like make a fake email and then show it to someone? Like, this is not like hacker cryptography.
Yeah,
Like,
yeah.
this is pretty simple. Like, I do this to make jokes and memes sometimes.
Yeah.
Um, like, there's really, that's really all it takes.
You could
Is-
that's it can be that simple. Like you probably
yeah.
could try to shop around a fake email. The thing is you would get found out.
Yeah,
Someone
and then
would say
eventually
this
you'd be
wasn't sent
destroyed and
around and then you would
discredited.
be
Yeah,
wrecked. So
yeah, yeah,
so some of these things are like one shot deals,
yeah.
including leaks like this. If you were to do something like what Wiz did every week, you would
Hmm.
lose credibility with everybody, including the press. It just would stop working.
Yeah,
And same with if you lie to the press, it'll be the last time you lied to the press. No one will ever pick up your phone,
yeah, yeah,
pick up
yeah,
your calls ever
yeah.
again. So maybe you'll get away with it once, but probably never again. It's the worst possible thing to do.
Yeah. And then can you talk to me about the other side of leaks? Like I've had fundraising announcements leak. I assume that's just because like there's so many people involved in a deal. There's lawyers, there's VCs, and everyone's talking at different.
It's always the VCs.
It's always the VCs.
Investors are very leaky,
Why?
and some VCs are more. I think it's directly correlated with chattiness.
Yeah.
It's got to be. I don't know if it's a personality type, but there's like industries that leak more or jobs that leak more. So
Yeah, yeah,
investors are super leaky. Not all, like there's some investors that are incredibly judicious with information,
yeah,
but
yeah,
there are some that are just very chatty. And then investment bankers are worse than VCs. There's like a hierarchy of leakiness even within investors.
yeah,
iBankers are the worst. Like every IPO has
sure.
massive leaks. Um, Sadly, one of the worst roles for leaks is like national security.
Well,
NSA is full of leakers. Pentagon is full of leakers. But
yeah.
yes, within tech, it's almost always the investors.
And we just saw a ton of leaks with the Biden thing, right? Where all of the Democratic kind of elites went and told him, "Hey, you got to step down." And then we saw a flurry of articles, and it's like,
Yeah,
how would that get out if you didn't just call the media and say,
yeah,
"Hey, I just did this thing," because
yeah,
he's not calling the media and saying,
yeah.
"Hey, Obama or Pelosi just came by and told me to step down." He's not going to say that, so it had to be them. Yeah,
Right. Oh, and what we were saying earlier about if you're going to leak, try not to make it super obvious that it's you. Like if there's people on a phone call, literally there are things where there's two people who would know about this or two
yeah,
people on
yeah,
a call
yeah.
and one of them has no interest in this leaking. So yeah, I think people literally do this where they will make the call or have the conversation and then immediately turn around and tell a reporter about it.
Yeah. Are there any ways to prevent leaks?
So no,
Like
you
on a
can't.
fundraising, I've always heard that it's like, these things have shelf lives. A
Yeah.
lot of startup founders will want to be like, okay, I have this one bullet in the gun that I can fire to get attention, and I want my product to be
Hmm.
ready. I want people to
Hmm.
be able to put their credit cards down. It's important that like when this Wall Street Journal article or this Ashley Vance article goes out, I'm ready to take the customers and like
Yeah, yeah,
convert
yeah.
this. And so a lot of companies, if they're still building, they'll say, okay, we're going to do it next month, next month, next month, and then it leaks, and then they lose everything. And
Yeah.
so,
Yeah,
how
it
do you
sucks.
think about that when you're
Okay.
coaching people?
So there's no way to completely prevent leaks. Like people will cite NDAs. I've had people send around
Yeah.
NDAs before they'll have a conversation. I mean, it doesn't do anything. In fact, you'll see newspaper articles where it's like 14 employees spoke to us but didn't share their names because they're all under NDA. It'll literally say they cited their employment agreements, barring them from speaking to the media. That's why they spoke to us without their names. And so NDAs do absolutely nothing.
Yeah.
Also, if they're leaking something about you and then you try to hold them legally accountable for the leak, you will look like an asshole, especially if they're leaking something unflattering to you. You'll look just like a thin skinned asshole.
Yep.
So I think there's no way to fully prevent it, but there's ways to deter it. So if you're a smaller company and it's something like a fundraise, and I'm very proud to say that fundraisers I've worked on, we've never had a leak ever, ever. And it's not that we never will, so like, please, but the things that you can do to deter it are one, you choose who you talk to. That's obvious. They're leaky people, and we don't have to name names, but some people are known to be
Yeah.
more leaky or have more discretion. Two is the sequence of people you talk to. So you, if possible, all else being equal, you want to talk to the leaky people last in the process or give them a very short heads up. Um, there's what information you share, and what you could do is not share quite enough information to have a story. So for the press to write a story, they want to know who's leading the round, how much is it for, what's the valuation. It's possible to run it with two of those. You can't really run it with one of those. And so what you could do is have conversations even with different VCs where you don't share who else is in the round, for example, until
Mhm.
really close. Um, and then another tactic is when you're talking to people about keeping something confidential, you want to make it personal so that it feels like a personal betrayal if they let you down.
Yep.
A lot of smaller startups that have not had leaks, it's because people feel a personal loyalty to the CEO. And
Mm.
so you want to make people feel as much as possible that it's not just some faceless corporation whose
Yep.
information they're
Yep.
giving away.
Yep.
It's like your secret.
Yeah, I've also heard founders talk about when they get the inquiry, hey, can you confirm we have the details of your round? We're TechCrunch and we're going to leak your round. a lot of founders, if they're good, they'll try and flip this into, hey, we'd love to give you the exclusive. Why don't we sit down for an interview, do a much bigger piece? Look, we do need to hit a certain date, and there's things that we want to correct. And you actually had an old deck, and we don't want those numbers out there. So we'd rather just give you the new numbers, because the new numbers are a lot better. Can you talk about like how to manage that without feeling like you're kind of strong arming the person that's basically strong arming you?
Yeah. Well, they know the dance. Like reporters know this dance. So there's no point in getting too cute. You're not going to somehow fool them that that's not what you're trying to do, because they've done it a million times. I think it's fine to be explicit about, okay, here's what we need and here's what we're willing to offer. Does this make sense to you? You could also try to offer them something that is like of legitimate journalistic value, not just a bigger article with more of this, but I can give you access to somebody who normally you would not have access to. Or it could be, let me help you prevent an embarrassing mistake. And you can slow it down, because they need to at least take time to confirm it. But I will say, though, that this tactic of trying to delay it by a few days while bartering more access is not as effective as it used to be, because the race for getting news out is so intense that for them, the downside is that some other outlet is going to scoop it. If they know the leak is out there, they'd rather not lose the story entirely.
Yeah. At the same time, I feel like maybe it's a better time than ever for fighting these types of things, because if a journalist reaches out and says, hey, I have details and I'm writing a story, and one of those details is wrong, because of the nature of X now and the going direct crowd and the megaphones that are directly in front of the tech industry, like if you're going to print something that's really, really wrong and like provably wrong, that could be a firestorm for you. And so I feel like the burden on getting the facts right has to be a little bit higher, even though I agree, it's offset by the idea that you got to go right now. It's faster than ever. The algorithm and all the internet's moving at blazing speeds.
You would think so. Empirically,
but
one would assume this.
But the results say that's a lie.
Yeah, the results do not back that up, John. Like empirically, that is not what's happening.
Sure.
It's still like I see people run with egregious errors all that. You do too, right? Like you see people run with like egregious factual errors all the time. And then it is embarrassing, and then they just take the embarrassment and then later do it again. There's much, much better journalists and much, much worse journalists. And sometimes you get somebody who is just trying to figure out what they're doing and they really want the hit. So it definitely depends on who the reporter is too.
Yeah. Okay. So let's say that the hit piece goes through. They have some good facts. Your enemies have been leaking to them, and you messed up. How do you apologize?
Okay. Whether to apologize, rich vein of a topic. Whether to apologize. I think first of all, it's like, do you apologize or do you double down? Right? If it's
I think
okay,
you just need like strong moral principles, and you need to understand, did you actually do anything wrong or not? And if you believe that in the fullness of time you will be vindicated, then obviously don't apologize for something that's not bad. But if you did mess up, then I mean, I think you do need to apologize. I mean, the CrowdStrike apology we talked about a little bit, but did you see that they are giving people like $10 gift cards? Is that a joke? Is that a meme? Is that complete fake news? Or is
people thought it was a joke? No, I think this is real news.
I imagine that this thing costs like $10,000 a month, like every other enterprise software. Like, how are they doing $10? That's ridiculous.
Yeah. Also, yes, like the $10, the Uber Eats of it all. Like it's one thing to say we're going to give you a credit for our service, but like go and get yourself something nice on Uber Eats, like it's like a pat on the butt as you walk by type of vibe. And then these people just went through a period of extreme operational load on their company and are still going through that. So like, why would you take on something that is complex, that you have to rush to get out, that has a lot of room for error because you're also depending on Uber for the code? Because something went wrong with the code. They sent the same code to everybody, and then Uber flagged it as spam and the code stopped working. It's
Whoa.
so painful. Like, why would you do this to yourself? Your life is already super hard. You've been working for 5 days straight. Just
Yeah.
do something that doesn't require a whole other operation.
Yeah, I think my greatest hope is that there will be just massive credit redemption fraud. You know how like when you know the refer a friend fraud where like
Yeah.
I know I saw a guy on Twitter who was scrolling through his Uber Eats credits because he had like a bot farm sign up and he had like $10,000 of free Uber Eats. And you know, I don't like that because obviously that's fraud and stupid and
No,
you
you
know,
don't like it
just
because
do
you're
it.
jealous.
But oh yeah. But for this, I want one of our Brazilian fans who has a little bit extra time. You know, as we've established, this podcast is huge in Brazil.
Huge.
I want to see a leaderboard in the comments of who was able to get the most CrowdStrike rebates. I want somebody who's eating for a year purely off of CrowdStrike coupons because who knows how
Yeah.
they're tracking this thing. There's probably it's just $10, so they'll probably give it to you if you just write a nice email. You use
Yeah.
GPT, you write
Yeah.
25,000 emails, 10,000 of those get the credit. Boom,
That's
you're eating for free
true.
forever. Oh
That's
yeah,
true.
this is gonna
Also,
happen.
like, if we have a company with 1,000 people, like, do we
Do
share
we
the
all
one gift
get them?
card, or does
Yeah,
everybody like
yeah. Who
who
gets
gets to get
it?
Uber Eats?
Exactly. Is it anyone who saw BSOD or blue screen or it's very unclear. Or if you weren't you're not a customer, but you were delayed at the airport, do
Yeah,
you get
yeah.
$10? Like
You should get
arguably you had a worse experience than just
much
like,
worse.
someone else at the company who was like, oh, okay, I'm not working today.
Wait,
Yeah.
okay, so your greatest hope is massive fraud on the referral side.
I just
My
want a really
greatest
great
hope,
story out of it. Yeah.
okay, my greatest hope
Yeah.
is that they accidentally sent more codes to white people.
Oh my God. And then they get canceled or something.
Like somehow a glitch happened so that the codes went only to men or something. That
Yeah.
would be the best. Because every like all these are legitimate questions, not about whether white people eat more Uber Eats,
Yeah.
but about like who in an organization gets the card and how do you get it to
Totally.
them? Like, how do
Yeah.
you have their emails?
Well, if there are any delays in getting CrowdStrike gift cards to our Brazilian listeners, you'll be hearing about it here first because
Oh,
we speak
absolutely.
for the Brazilians.
We will not let that
We
stand.
will not let that
It's
stand.
beyond the pale. So, real quick, I know
Yeah.
this isn't comms, but how does someone go from a normal Uber Eats account to like $1,000 in referrals? You just refer yourself to Uber
No.
Eats?
I think it was basically like a Mechanical Turk type scam where there's a lot of people in basically foreign countries, India, and what they would do is they would put out a task and the task would require you to create a new email, create a new account, and
Oh,
go
so you're
through the whole
referring
sign up
out to
flow.
all of these. Yeah.
And so there's people there. You've seen those videos where it's like somebody using like 25 iPads at the same time to like fraudulently trigger
Yeah,
ads
yeah,
in
yeah.
mobile games or whatever. Like there's whole farms for this stuff. And this guy was like just good at marshaling like bot farms essentially. And so
Incredible.
he was able to do this. And I was like, I can't believe you're posting this. This is so egregious that you're just openly talking about this. And I think it's immoral, but
Yeah,
you know,
it's probably illegal.
In the CrowdStrike scenario, it's funny. So we're going to give them a pass.
Funny makes everything okay, honestly. You can get
Exactly.
away with anything. If I think that's in the law. Like, if it's hilarious enough, you should get
A
a
jury
pass.
has a sense of humor.
Yeah. Yeah. It should be like
I
severity
don't
of the
know.
crime and how
Ask a
funny
lawyer
was it.
before you
No,
defraud
no, this
CrowdStrike
is
of their
legal.
$10 gift card. This is legal advice.
This is it. Investment advice as well.
Yeah. Yeah.
Okay. Well, on leaks, one other thing on leaks is if
Yeah.
something leaks and they got something wrong, I don't think you should necessarily correct it.
Mm.
Like
Why?
if it's devastating to you and it's like John Coogan murdered a guy and they're about to print
Yeah.
that, you should try to get them to not print it. Free advice.
Yeah.
But
Okay.
but if it's like this article was going to print that Alex Wang had a sibling that he doesn't actually have, like
Yeah.
whatever, that's not your job to correct that for them. Leave it in there. Leave it in there. You can go back for it later.
My two co-founders, they met at Caltech. One in a PhD program. One of them has a PhD, the other dropped out of the PhD program.
Mm.
That's just word salad. So it often gets
Yeah.
collapsed down to they both have PhDs.
Yeah.
When we first got to Silicon Valley, there was another startup team that we were kind of following, and we saw firsthand in the press how it was like they were first like they were interns at McKinsey when the articles were written. Then they were like McKinsey consultants. Then they were like big shot consultants at McKinsey because
Uh-huh.
like yeah they worked at McKinsey but they like were pretty young when they started this company. They were great founders and they built a great business but like not because they were big shots at McKinsey, but the press
Hmm.
just kind of like needed to amp up the level and maybe they were egging them on or something, but there were definitely no corrections. And
Yeah, it's like a human fishing story. You know, the
yeah.
fish just grows every time you tell this story.
Yeah. I mean, that stuff can come back to bite you. I've seen a few times where like politicians, they'll go back and dig through and they'll be like, "Oh, there was like credential fraud." And it's like if there's a
Yeah.
big stack of things and it seems like it's a pattern, that's where people get really upset. But if you can also go pull a clip of like them talking a podcast and they're like, "Oh yeah, this is actually the facts," and then it's just somebody else
Yeah.
wrote it, that's a little bit different than like them portraying like a lot of people do this like the Harvard Business Extension School or
Yeah.
like
I know.
there's these
That's not a
fraudulent have
thing.
you seen these fraudulent things where you can pay like 10 grand and you can go and give a talk at Harvard and what they do is they just
No.
they just rent a classroom and they put up like the Harvard insignia and they give you a microphone.
No.
There's no one in the audience and they'll film you. Yeah,
No.
and they'll film you and it'll be like Lulu, speaker at Harvard, a Harvard speaker, distinguished speaker, because they do have people like
This
Kim
is
Kardashian
so,
come
yeah,
and Mr.
yeah.
Beast come to
Like
real
stolen
yeah
valor.
to real
Stolen
HBS.
Harvard valor.
Yeah, stolen valor
Wow.
is huge.
That's huge. Well, so
Yeah,
you know how people would put on the podcast gear and talk into a podcast mic and they're not on a podcast and it just
just because it makes
looks
for better
like someone.
clips.
Yeah, yeah. I need to do that, by the way. This is not, I keep trying different stuff. This is still a work in
Whatever.
progress. But did
All
you
good.
see that uh, Elon said it was not true that he's donating 45 million a month to Trump, but it was
I
out there for
did
like
see
a
that.
week.
I
And
did see
didn't
that.
Trump said it in a speech, didn't he?
Oh, I don't know. I went back and I read the original Wall Street Journal
Yeah.
article, and the
Yeah.
article has now been changed to the third paragraph is after this article published, Elon Musk replied, "Fake GNUS," which is like news, but it's spelled like GNU Linux, which
Yeah, yeah. It's
I
feel
don't
like
even
the
really
animal.
bet Elon's joke, but basically, as soon as that published, Elon was like, "This is wrong." But then I think what happened was like somebody else posted like it's so crazy that the Democrats have pushed Elon to the point where he's supporting Trump, and he was like, "You have spoken the truth" or whatever. And so
Yeah.
they took that as a confirmation, and then Elon denied it again, saying, "Hey, I never said that I was donating $45 million a month."
Oh,
But also it's like I don't even know how we got here because
yeah.
like I don't know, is he, isn't he, does it matter? We'll see it in the FEC filings. Like this is going to happen.
Yeah,
Like
yeah,
what
right.
we'll get the data.
I didn't realize he had actually denied it really early on, which is good and smart. All you need is like one of your own receipts saying
Yeah,
that you tried to correct this at some point. Like if somebody ever tries to use it against you, you just need one receipt. And
yeah,
maybe this is like maybe I am spreading fake news, but
yeah.
I thought that Trump in his 77-minute speech that I tapped out of, but you said you watched, didn't he say that
I
Elon
don't
was, or
remember
maybe in the
that
next,
part.
like in a rally?
I don't remember him mentioning Elon at all because
I think it was the
uh,
next speech. It was like the next rally he had. He said that Elon was donating
oh, maybe
a
the
ton
next
of money
rally.
to
Yeah, that's
him. I
possible.
think he said
I
that
don't
amount.
watch every Trump rally, and I listen to the
You don't
Beyond.
get the RSS of
No, no, and
all
I
the
listened
Trump
to
speeches.
the speech on 2X, which was good. I've determined that
That's
like
good.
Trump is a 2X president, Biden is a 3X
Yeah,
president. If you put
3x.
Biden on 3X, he actually sounds pretty good. I think they should have done a lot of his speeches on higher speed. People would
Yeah.
like him more. But
I'm gonna go on record, by the way,
yeah,
as Kamala 0.5x. I think
oh
this
yeah,
is
you
where
got to slow her
Trump.
down.
Yeah, I
Interesting.
think you slow her down. I
Go on
think she
there.
wins the hearts and minds of all of the
Yeah.
country. Yeah.
Yeah, the game will be won on the speed settings for all this stuff. But yeah, I mean the Trump RNC speech was controversial for the first like 45 minutes because he said like, and we're not doing this electric mandate. Like if you want a gas car, you can have it. And everyone was like, oh, he's taking shots at Elon. Oh, he's anti electric car. And then later in the speech, he came back to it and was like, look, I think you should be able to drive whatever you want. If you want to drive an electric car, that's great, but you shouldn't not be able to drive a gas car, which is kind of funny because like I wonder if that was written in the speech or like if he like it seems like he had an earpiece being like people are talking trash on Twitter, like you should address this. It was like kind of crazy that I saw people tweeting about it and then he addressed it while on stage. Like is somebody writing
If
this
you
stuff?
ask, okay, but if you ask, like, what's more likely? Scenario A, he has an earpiece where he has asked someone to read him Twitter replies to what he's saying, versus scenario 2, they thought it made sense in the speech to break up those
Hate it.
sections 20 minutes apart. It's clearly A.
Or he knows about clickbait, like get people riled up and then debunk
Could
them
be.
in the same speech.
Could
He does
be.
that a lot where he'll clearly word something in a way that can be taken out of context. Like the dictator on day one thing was kind of like that, where
Hmm.
like you only use that word if you know that people are going to call you a dictator. And then it's kind of like this weird puzzle for your fans because when people dig into it, it's like, oh no, he's just talking about like the executive orders that he's going to do. And like that is kind of dictatorial. And so he's kind of creating these like breadcrumbs for people to
Yeah,
like
it's
go and
finding
hunt
the
down.
Zodiac killer just to understand what he's trying to say.
Yeah. He does this a lot where it's like the true fans, they feel like, oh no, everyone's taking him out of context when you look at it in the context, like there's a deeper meaning here. And he's creating like these like clues, which is like
I wouldn't
it's
put it
lore.
past
It's
him.
lore for the fans.
He has a genius for virality on a level that I don't think I even understand.
Yeah.
So maybe
Yeah.
it makes no sense
I mean, he's
on
been
its
doing
surface.
entertainment for like
It's
60 years.
working.
So,
Yeah, it's working. It's
Yeah.
working.